Apple just made AI apps ridiculously easy in SwiftUI. So within this application, just say if you didn't know how to create a certain recipe, such as a pancake, you can type in the word pancake or whatever recipe meal you want to create, click on generate, and then it will show the actual recipe, how to make a pancake with the actual steps. And this is the application we'll be creating in this tutorial. The first thing we need to do is to create a new file. This file will be our ingredient struct. Then we need to import foundation models. So the foundation models give us access to the on-device AI features like structure generation, this tells the model to return structured ingredient data instead of plain text. We need to create another file. This will be our recipe step, which is another struct. The next struct we need to create will be our recipe struct. We need to include a title, which will be the name of the dish. Also a summary or an overview of the recipe. And the amount of servings. I'll just copy and paste the rest of the attributes. This is where most tutorials stops and people get stuck, especially with how to structure this properly. I'll go through this in a real world SwiftUI application on my course. Link is in the description.
¿Cómo estás hoy? ¿Puedo ver el menú?
This prepares our model or service before we use it. For example, warming up an AI model so the first request is faster. Now your app won't break even without Apple Foundation models. Next, we will hook up this into a real AI and switch between both seamlessly. In SwiftUI, your app isn't broken, you're just missing this one fallback. We will now implement the fallback. This function returns a hard-coded recipe instead of calling the AI. So on that line, we just clean up the user's input by trimming the spaces and new lines. I'll just copy and paste the remaining code. So the remaining code will return the actual mock data, which is a fully structured recipe object. Cannot find recipe. Seems like recipe was spelled incorrectly. So let's go and fix that now. Yeah, it's spelled incorrectly. Just remove the E. And also we have to do the same thing on the function signature. Just remove the E. So this makes it clear to the user that this is mock data and foundation model are unavailable on this device. And these steps matches the structure that we defined earlier. And this is a tip to help the user, to guide them to enable foundation model on their device. And the last one just includes some basic safety guidance when preparing meals or creating some dish. Right now, this is all mock data. In the next episode, we'll replace it with real on-device AI using Apple Foundation models. Watch that next. I collaborate with SwiftUI creators and iOS developers on advanced iOS tutorials, scalable apps and developers tools, so feel free to reach out if you're working on something interesting. The first thing we need to do is to create a new file. Rename the file as foundation model recipe generator. and then we import the following. Create our class. And this is our session that manages communication with the AI model. And here we configure the model's behavior using a system prompt. Think of it as setting the personality and rules for the AI. I'll just copy the actual prompt now from the clipboard instead of typing it in manually. Tutorial stops and people get stuck, especially with how to structure this properly. I'll go through this in a real world SwiftUI application on my course. Link is in the description.
¿Cómo estás hoy? ¿Puedo ver el menú?
This prepares the model ahead of time for faster responses using pre-warm. And that cleans up the user input before sending it to the AI. This is where the AI call happens. We send the prompt and ask it to generate a recipe object directly. Response was spelled incorrectly on line 61. So that should be okay now. So on line 63, we return the structured data, no parsing required. So this is the engine. It takes a dish name and generates a full recipe using on-device AI. But we cannot control it yet. In the next episode, we'll build a view model to handle input, loading errors and cancellation. And that's when everything clicks together. And that's where everything clicks together. The first thing we need to do is to create a new file, Swift file. Let's name the file Cookery View Model. Import the following. This is our view model. It connects the UI to our recipe generator. It manages user input, loading state, and the generated recipe. So this initialization method allows us to swap implementation easy. For example, we can swap it for real AI or a mock. And this prepares the model for faster responses. The next function we need to create is generate recipe function. This line prevents empty import or duplicate requests from happening. Cancel any existing request before starting a new one. And these two lines starts a new async task to generate a recipe. I think there's an error on lines 43. What's missing? Task equals task. So no matching initializer. I think the issue is that the function needs to be completed first, and then that issue should go away, should be resolved. So let's just continue the implementation. So that line will update the UI with the results. Compile it. Cannot find recipe in scope. And it was spelled incorrectly. So that should be recipe. And that update needs to be done within the protocol. Compile it again. So it's okay now. So the other parts that we just done was to capture or handle any errors. On 955, that will handle AI specific errors. And on 957, that will handle any other unexpected errors. So the next thing we need to do is to implement our other two functions, and that's cancel and clear function. And the purpose of cancel is to allow the user to stop the generation midway. So to stop the operation at any time. And then the other function we need is clear. And that just resets everything to the default state or initial state. And in the next episode, we'll transform all of this AI logic into a fully working Cookery AI app with a polished SwiftUI interface that actually feels production ready. This is where the project finally comes to life, so let's build it. In this episode, we'll focus on the content view. The first thing we need to do is to create the functions for the symbols, such as the knife, fork, drop, or the leaf. As you can see here, you can see two of them here anyway. So that's what we'll start to implement right now. So let's just head over to the content view and implement our first function, which is private function safe symbol So the purpose of this function is also to protect the app if the AI returns an unexpected SF symbol name. So the actual symbols that we'll be using, I'll just copy and paste them. See if it pastes to the clipboard. Yes, it does. And then I'll just return the actual symbol name. The next function we need to create is called step color. And the purpose of that function is to show the color of each of the steps. So the next thing we need to do is to implement the section title. As you can see, this is a reusable view. There's an issue with the system size. What am I missing? Got too many arguments. So weight colon dot bold design dot rounded. That looks correct. Something happened with the recording. It wasn't recording the screen. So I started to create the info card, as I said previously, but I don't think it was recording. The purpose of the info card is to show the serving information, such as the preparation time and the cook time. As you can see, really this should be within a reusable function because they're both similar. The only difference is that we're using 18 on this line and 8 on this line. I'll just copy some code from the clipboard. The next view we need to create is a step row. The purpose of that view is to give each step a color based on its step number. That should be funk. And then we just return a H-stack. I'll just copy and paste that from the clipboard. So the H-stack will include a circle, and an image and 2 text elements. Cannot find color because color was spelled differently at the top, so let's just correct it now how it was defined. So just put the U there. Okay, that's correct now. The next view we need to create is the header input view. The purpose of this view is to enable the user to type in which dish they want to create. So this is the actual text field where the user is able to type in their dish type that they want to create. And this is stored within our view model, which is the disk query property. I just copy and paste some code from the clipboard for padding and clip shape. That includes a bit of styling for the text field. This should be a text field anyway, not text. Text field. The next thing we need to do is to start the actual recipe generation that we'll call the actual AI within foundation model. As you can see, our view model object variable doesn't exist as yet, so we create that afterwards. I'll just create it now so that it compiles anyway. I'll just paste the code from the clipboard that includes the button action to call or to generate the recipe via foundation model. So it's just a standard button just being called, the action being called on line 34. and then we just include some validation on the button on line 42. In the next episode, we will continue implementing the rest of the content view. So the first thing we need to do is to implement the recipe cards. So that should be private func recipe card. Yeah, that's correct. And then, the actual recipe card will resemble this and include the actual steps. We need to add a VStack. With a spacing of 8. So this will be the main recipe title and summary. We also need to create another text element for the recipe summary. I'll just copy and paste that from the clipboard. After 32, there shouldn't be a colon, so we'll just delete that. The next thing we need to do is to create our H-tag. The purpose of the H-tag will include the actual card recipe details, such as serving, prep or cook. As you can see in this image, servings, prep or cook. We use the info card that we created earlier. So that's our first card. Now we need to create another card. and then our final card. The next thing we need to do is to create our steps, and they're sorted so they appear in the correct order. The next section we need to implement is our ingredient section that will resemble this, as you can see, with the list of ingredients that's needed. The ingredients are displayed as a simple checklist. Now we need the B stack and not the for each. And then we need a H stack. On lines 50, we need to change the ID to .item. The next section we need to do is to display the tips as seen here. So I'll just copy the code from the clipboard. And we must only show the tips if the model provides it. And the next thing we need to implement is to show our safety notes if they exist. So I'll just copy the code from the clipboard. So that should be section title. The next thing we need to do is to implement our initializer to get our variables ready to perform the actual work. And the purpose of implementing this initializer, it will choose the real AI generator if foundation models are available. Otherwise, it will fall back to a mock generated version. And this is where we do the actual fallback. Seems like we also need to import foundation models. Also need to initialize our view model. I'll just compile it again. It's still failing. Oh, that bracket shouldn't be there. Let me just see, close the function there. No, that bracket should be there. Seems like there's an error with the formatting somewhere. there were a few brackets in the wrong place, and some of the structure wasn't formatted correctly within some of the V stacks. So I had to fix those issues offline to reduce the length of the video. So the actual content view should resemble this.